Welcome, everybody, to the Dev Life podcast. My name is Brooke, and that is Matt,
Hello.
and that is Nicole.
Oh,
This is Nicole Oliver, everybody, from NX. We've asked her to come here today because we want to explore what it's really like moving from a software engineering role into program management, but we've also learned that Nicole kind of wears a few hats. So the idea really with the episode today is just going from software engineer to taking on a new role, what that looks like, maybe challenges you face, why you would want to do that, things to consider, just kind of all of that. But um, yeah, I mean, I think just being curious about new career paths and taking a fresh perspective, especially in today's job market. I feel like
yeah.
we were just talking about this yesterday on it with Chris Perko, and being open to new roles and not just being a software engineer. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Nicole, let's have you introduce yourself a little bit. Maybe give a little bit about your background, where you come from, what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually have a lot to say, I think, about changing roles because I do it a lot. Um, I when I went to school, I was studying studio art, so I planned to be an illustrator. And then when I got out of school, I realized that I really valued like having a stable job. And a lot of the art paths that I was looking at were more kind of like make your own path and kind of like a little less stable than I wanted. And so I started looking at web development, which was something that I had been doing casually since I was in high school. So I kind of went down that path and learned a lot of what I know as an engineer on the job. I've been a software engineer for a little over 10 years now. Um, and through a lot of that, I was really focused on user experience, design, front end development. Um, I really, really love data visualization. So I spent a lot of time thinking that I would like kind of go down that path and like combine some of my art skills into web development, which worked out quite well for me for a long time. Spent a lot of time on small teams. And then I went to Nintendo for a little while, and then I started with NX or Narwhal and did consulting for 5 years. And that allowed me to consult with some very large teams, very large enterprises, um, doing work that at a scale that I had never done before. And it was really exciting and challenging and gave me a lot of exposure to things that I otherwise hadn't had in my career. And then I think it was about 3 years ago, Narwhal switched over to from mostly consulting to owning our own product and really building on top of that. And so a lot of the team went through this transition where we were all like primarily engineers, and then there were folks on the team who had to take on new roles. And during that time, I started managing a team, became an engineering manager, and also took on this new role as a product manager. And this was something that was entirely new for the Narwhal team. So yeah, I learned a lot along the way. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it today.
Mhm.
But that's kind of a brief bit about my background.
I just have to say too, like every time I've met someone from Narwhal, now NX, I think that's like I would die to work there. You guys have such cool team members.
Wow.
Just such a great team, great group of people.
I agree. I agree 100%. It's a really, really smart, down to earth team, which I really value. The culture that is crafted by Victor and Jeff that they put into place and the rest of the team is carried out. Honestly, it's the best place that I've ever worked. There's like there is a culture of trust and treating you like an adult, which I really value. And yeah, I get inspired by my colleagues every day.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, as an extreme nerd and also an extreme gamer, I have to ask, what was it like working for Nintendo?
Oh, yeah, it was an interesting experience. At the time, I had just moved up to the Seattle area because my husband got a job at Xbox. And we were like right across from each other in terms like the
Oh,
Nintendo campus is like right next to Xbox and the Microsoft campus. So it was really strange. We were like working right next to each other, but we could never talk about work
oh
because
wow.
it was all secret. I was working in a unit that did game testing. So we were working on internal applications. And Nintendo, I mean, it was a really interesting organization to be a part of. I also like got a lot. I didn't play Nintendo games when I was a kid, so I learned a lot about them while I was there, and I got really into them because they're so fun. Like, how can you not? Um, so it was fun. Like there were like we were working in a place where everybody was really passionate about games, and I played games like for most of my life too. So it was just it was a fun culture to be a part of for sure.
Wow. Wow, you've been in so many roles and worked for so many cool places. So one of the vibes we kind of have in this podcast that people who've been listening for a while know is kind of a beach surfy vibe. So
Mm.
this might be a tricky question, but if you were to assign a beach activity to each of these various roles that you've been in, what would they be?
Oh, let's see, a beachy vibe. I think that for engineering, it's got to be something active, right? Because you're like really in the thick of it. Like you're doing all the work, and maybe something like running on the beach or like playing volleyball, something like that. Um, Program management, product management is, and engineering management, I think, kind of go in the same bucket. I would say it's like organizing a beach picnic, making sure that like everything is like coming together, bringing all the supplies, making sure everybody gets there on time. There's a lot of. I'm
I
gonna
love
say that. Yeah, that's my answer. There's some
No,
things that
that's
I don't
great.
know if they fit into the metaphor.
Yeah, that's a tricky metaphor. I'm like trying to add to that. Like I guess a lifeguard is like the security person.
Okay, I like that. Yeah,
The person whose
But
head is just sticking out of the sand. I don't know. Somebody.
yeah, yeah.
You know what? When I was a kid, we did these like big tricycle bike things. They were like made for
yeah.
sand, though. Have you ever been on one of those?
I've seen them.
Okay.
Seen
So
with the
that's,
really thick tires.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is
hmm
hard. Like
Yeah.
once you get into it, it's fine, but like, dang, it's a really
Really
good
hard.
workout, though. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like anytime you're doing anything in sand, it's a little bit harder than
Yeah. So true.
Absolutely. Well, with all that in mind, let's go to talk about transitioning from developer roles into other positions on product teams. So, Nicole, you've already told us a bit about your background and moving out of software development. What was your aha moment that made you consider stepping away from hands-on engineering into a program management role?
well, this is not going to be very exciting, but it was it was really just what the company needed at the time. Um, Jeff and Victor asked me, I think they were looking previously for somebody who was working like a product leader who had had previous experience in product. But one of the things that they were also considering was like finding somebody within the company who already had the background, the context on what we were building, and having them learn the skills involved in product. So that's what we did. That's what we tried. I usually find myself I'm fairly fluid when it comes to like what I do in my day to day. I find myself like the kind of person who when presented with something new like that, usually I'm up for at least like trying it out. I can't always say that I'm like good at a new skill. It takes me a while to like pick some things up, but I do find them like really interesting. Like this in particular was a very social and people forward challenge, which is something that I have not experienced in my career for the most part. And and that was kind of like the biggest component that was new to me that I wanted to kind of like try out.
See, I love that. And I'm relating to you a lot because
Mm.
I'm someone also who has a bit of a twisty background. That
Oh,
makes it
cool.
sound bad, but yeah, I mean, like I come from teaching and education and
Ah,
made my way actually into working with ng-conf and Thinkster. So it was event planning and business and
yeah.
sponsors and like all these things, and then into software engineering. So I'm relating to it a lot, and I love your flexibility and just
Mm,
how you never closed yourself off to opportunities as they were presented to you. And I think
yeah.
that that's kind of one of the, and not just with jobs, but like in life in general, is just kind of doing what you can, doing your best, but not like being so shut off to new opportunities as they come. And I've kind of found that that's where, if we're talking about the dev life and living our ultimate developer life, I feel like that's a large part of it is just having that openness.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know about you, but I have always found myself like drawn to a lot of different things. I think that there are a lot of fields that are interesting. So I don't feel the need to like go down one particular path, which I honestly think like for people who do have that sure path for themselves, that's great. Like I think that's wonderful that they are very sure of themselves and like know where they're going. But for me, I just have like had a lot of interest, so I that's the benefit of having so many interests, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And real quick too, I know we've talked about already, like you've mentioned a couple times program management, but maybe this is a good time to stop because I think there is always some confusion on program management versus technical program management versus
Hmm.
project management. But what can you say about the differences there?
Yeah, so I'm actually not as familiar with program management. And I looked it up before, full
Nice.
disclosure. I looked it
Nice.
up before this because I wanted to know what the internet had to say about like the differences between them. I am much more familiar with product management, which is like kind of been my focus over the last couple of years. But I also have a number of friends who work at Microsoft, and they've kind of filled me in on some of the details of program management, which they practice there. Um, my understanding is that program management is much more focused on like organizing details and um, often working across teams to accomplish a certain like goal within the organization. And that product management is often more strategic and looking at like you focus on one particular product and you own some feature or set of features, and you are looking at um, how do I make this product successful through data, talking to customers, and doing like user interviews and being really focused on like technically ensuring that you validate solutions before your team goes out and builds them. And sometimes like project management is a discipline within that. So sometimes it can be scheduling meetings, getting the team together, organizing people around different questions and like answering those questions and then getting the team to kind of like work on them. But like not every product manager does a great deal of project management. Usually you start in some project management and you kind of like as you kind of go up in your career, you get more into strategy, strategic thinking. Where do we want to go in 5 years? How does this fit into the larger picture of my organization? And my understanding is that there is a parallel with program management and project management, where program management has the sub-discipline of project management. And then as you kind of like get further up in the ranks, you're doing more. You might even like, I think in the case of Microsoft, I don't know if everybody has this, but in the case of Microsoft, product managers are usually a role that you grow into uh, from
Checked.
from project management or program management. So it's different with a lot of different companies, is what I've gathered from like talking to other folks. And it's especially different in my role because I am an engineering manager and an IC and doing some product management.
As someone who's written code and shipped features,
Hmm.
what developer frustrations did you want to solve from the product manager side?
When you say developer frustrations, do you mean frustrations for developers on my team or developers that are using my product?
Oh, that's a good question. Either or both.
Okay. Um, so I think I can speak to this more from the engineering manager standpoint because for product management, I think somebody who's truly focused on product management is not really as concerned about like developers on their team and their frustrations. It's usually more kind of in the wheelhouse of the engineering manager to solve those. But because I come from both, I do understand the history, and because I've been working on this team for a while, I do understand the history, and I see a lot of the difficulties with, maybe developer experience, developer ergonomics, and have to weigh those with like all of the priorities from the product side. So when we're looking, I think if somebody were coming in new, they would have like a pretty clean slate and be able to prioritize just the product needs. But for better for worse, I have like the full perspective, I think. And so, or much more full perspective. And so I will often like kind of put them in the same prioritization kind of like queue. Um, I think from from a understanding our users perspective, it's made a huge difference because we work on a tool that is primarily like one of the main audiences is engineers. And
Hmm.
so having a technical understanding of the product, which we dog food, so it makes it easy to put ourselves in the place of the customer. Um, it has made a huge difference in being able to be effective as a product manager.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thought because I think a lot of engineers, software engineers, are so used to like their customer is an everyday user, not
Mhm.
necessarily a software engineer. So that's got to be
Hmm.
tricky to be making a product for someone who really can sit there and like analyze, from a very technical perspective, like why did they do that way? So that would be challenging. That said, though, I'm really curious about this because like I switched roles. I went from software engineer, moved into technical program management. There was a part of me that was a little bit like I guess it's the ego side of me. Honestly, it was like I worked really hard to get into
Mm.
that role. Like I said, coming from education, going through these other roles, and I have to admit too, like programming did not come naturally to me. I had to really fight to get
Mm.
to where I was, and so it was a badge of honor, honestly, to have software engineer on my resume. So making that transition into a technical program management position, it was there was some hesitancy of like, what is that? How does that reflect on me? What will the engineers think of me? I've been so proud to be in the trenches with them. Will this change that? But I don't know, did you have any similar feelings or how did you get over that?
I I can't say that I had similar feelings, but probably because of the uniqueness of the way that NX is structured. Within the engineering organization, the product organization, anybody who is a engineer is also going to be an IC. So we don't have engineering managers who are not also ICs. And that's something that is really important to our CTO, Victor. He's been very vigilant about making sure that that is the case for anybody who has been on the engineering team. Um, and so nobody really leaves. Nobody really leaves their IC role. And it is really valuable because we are a dev tools company. It makes a big difference. I'm curious, when you entered into program management, did you were you at the same company or did you go to a different? Okay. And did you enjoy like your day to day when you were like an engineer?
Absolutely. Yeah, in
Mm,
fact, it was because I was enjoying it that I was finding in some spare moments here and there to like organize different initiatives and things just for fun, like just
mm.
for the pure fun of it. And it was then that my manager sat down with me and said, I know you have this background and I see what you're doing here. And he was the one that said, have you ever considered program management? And I was like, what is that? So I hadn't, but he then gave me the flexibility to he was like, let's do like a 20-80%, 20% program management, still keep you doing mostly engineering, but just dip your toes in. And he's like, if you don't like it, no worries. But it was just very, I don't know, very respectfully done, carefully. He wasn't pressuring, but yeah.
Good. Yeah, I've had a few transitions like that in my career. And I honestly think it is the best way to like learn a new skill that you're going to like, it's the best way to transition to a new role.
Yeah.
Um, it's unfortunately not always an opportunity that's given to people, but it is hands down in my experience the best way to learn a new role because you don't have like the pressure um, of trying to find a job in that environment with like competing with lots of other people. Like you already have some context on like whatever you're working on, and you know the people that can give you feedback like on your team. Um, so I don't know. I feel really fortunate to have had that, and I hope you do too.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, but it
That's
is.
awesome.
I understand. Like it is. Um, it is difficult to like give it. I feel like engineering is kind of like a rock star role.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
Even if like you're not acting like a rock star, like you kind of feel cool doing it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so so I understand what you're saying for sure.
So it's just amazing to me how many different roles you've adapted into, and it sounds like just thrived in all of them. What advice would you give to people who are taking up different roles and like how to be in the right mindset for it and develop their skills at transitioning?
Yeah, I guess everybody has like a different learning style. For me, when I started this product management role, I just like I bought five like product management books and started following. I like read through them all. I started following a lot of different people on social media, LinkedIn, and just saw what they had to say about product management, and that really opened my eyes up. I know that not everybody kind of operates that way, and I don't think it's necessarily the best way to dive into something new for everyone. But for me, it is, I like to start from like a platform of like understanding how the industry should like thinks that you should operate in this role. Um, but when after I kind of like went through all the books that I was reading, and started trying to implement some of the things that I was reading about being product led as a company, I found that there's a lot of nuance in how you introduce those things to an organization that has not been operating in that way. Like change management is like a whole another skill set that that I was not familiar with before, and there's a lot of skill there. I think there's a lot of skill just generally in kind of these roles like engineering management and product management, any kind of like leadership role that before you take it on seems it seems like it's a soft skill or like trivial in some respect, but when you do it, oh my goodness, it's complicated, it's nuanced, it has so many factors that I did not expect. So just being kind of like prepared for like a not necessarily like smooth transition I think is important whenever you're making a transition. Like I had that also when I was learning to program. When I was learning Node like on the job, I went through, I was like nose to the grindstone, and got really frustrated. I think all programmers can probably relate to this because everybody goes through it to some extent. Um, but yeah, just kind of like working through all that and knowing that you're going to get to the other side um, and not getting kind of bogged down by like the valley of despair. If you're familiar with that from what is it called? When you're like on a learning journey, you kind of like go up and you feel I can't remember the name of the like theorem. I'm
Yeah.
terrible with names. That's part of my that is one of my downfalls. Valley of Despair. The
Yeah.
Dunning-Kruger effect. The
The
Dunning-Kruger
Kruger effect.
effect.
Okay.
Yeah. It's where you
Awesome.
like when you're learning something new and you get to like you kind of go up a first path and it's like it's somewhat easy and you're like, "Oh, I'm feeling really good. This is so easy. Like I'm gonna make so much progress." And you just don't know like what you don't know. And then once you learn a little bit more, you like go down into the valley of despair where you're like, I'm never gonna get where I want to be, and this is so hard. I'm putting so much effort in. I'm not getting that much out of it. And then there's like I think it's called the plateau of like consistency or something like that, where you have enough of the skill that you are doing fairly well, and you're able to make consistent progress.
Oh, that is so fascinating. Like I was just talking to my brother. He teaches at a university programming engineering,
Mm,
and he was telling me this is the exact curve his students follow. He was
yeah.
like, they all join me and they're all so confident and
Hmm.
they think they know so much, and then
Hmm.
they goes up and then they hit this phase where they're like, whoa, I know nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And then yeah, throughout our career, we eventually, get up there to that plateau. And
Hmm.
I also love that you mentioned books. I feel like you do it the right way. I've done it the wrong way throughout my career, where what I've usually done is I've gotten into the position and then realized, oh shoot, I need to read a book now at this
Mm.
point, 2 months in. And then panic read the book, and then oh my gosh, it saves me. Like when I first was running a company for the first time, it was like I had no clue what to do. And then,
Mm.
I found this book, The Culture Code, that just changed my approach to everything. For me, programming, it was pragmatic programmer.
Mm. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
everyone's speaking the language about, and I didn't know how to talk it. And then, read pragmatic programmer. Good tip for you engineers out there. If you want to
Yeah.
learn the language, that's a good one.
Yeah, it makes a big difference to have like a framework. For me, at least, I think there are a lot of people who learn socially, learn by doing. I I think everybody learns by doing, but
Mhm.
for me, having a framework in place to understand what I'm learning to kind of like climb off of is it makes a big difference in how I absorb the information and retain it.
Okay, so I have to ask because you kind of mentioned like change and when
Mm,
a, a department or team is going through these changes and boy, Limble has no idea what change is, right, Matt? We've gone through some definite like I mean, like any startup is going to go through change and growth and development, but I'm
mm,
curious because like as you've now been in both seats here, what I'm curious about is like when you know how like product and engineering really have to work closely together and that their opinions may not always line up. Like product may have a slightly different opinion or take on something than the engineers. So now that you've been in both positions, how would you say that your perspective has changed at all through that? Like when a company is growing or when there is a change that's going on, what's kind of your new perspective from a program manager's side rather than just the engineering? And how would you bridge differences?
so the way that a lot of the leaders in the industry recommend that you develop products in a product-led fashion is that you are not kind of like handing off like I think a lot of people in software development are used to kind of like a new waterfall method basically like we all call ourselves agile but basically like the way that we're developing is still kind of waterfall in that like leadership makes a decision about what needs to be made uh then some other folks in leadership kind of like hammer out the details. Then it gets kind of like handed down to a manager who says, these are the requirements that need to be in place. Like a project manager is going to like detail all those out, and then a designer is going to kind of like try and make it look better, but not actually like make any functional changes to it because it's already been hammered out. And then by the time it gets to engineering, it's like you just need to implement it. There's no room for you to make decisions here. And then it gets to QA, who can just like kind of point out bugs, but not really like point out functional differences in like how the product operates and like how effective it is. And then it just gets pushed out. Um, so that is a pretty typical way of like developing at companies. The way that is kind of like recommended from like a true product led standpoint is that your team is made up of like a product person, a designer, and an engineer at the minimum. Um, and you work in like a small group and you are handed a problem to solve. Say like we are not hitting our onboarding numbers. Like we want to be able to grow our product and we need more people to be onboarding. Okay, so your team is given this problem, and then you don't know what the solution is yet. You don't have like a set of requirements. You just have that goal, and your team is going to collaborate really closely for a period of time and prototype as much as possible so that you can figure out what works. And you're looking at data, you're talking to customers, you are getting like concrete feedback about what is working and what is not. Um, and then once the purpose of doing that is like to have the prototype like go through as many prototypes as possible so that you are able to find a solution before you sink a lot of effort into it, right? And then once you, as a team, decide on everything and have that conversation, and the engineer is like just as involved as, say, a product person or the designer in making those decisions, then you will all, in parallel or on your own timelines, do the long work of actually implementing. Um, so that understanding that was the biggest shift that I had after I moved to product. That is the ideal way to kind of like put all the difficult decisions up front and make sure that everybody's on board with them before you are like putting in all the effort and not getting to the end of a project and saying, ah, it's not successful. We'll just like do it again later or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was a big aha moment for me. The other thing that I wanted to say was that I, I, what I realized after reading all these books and understanding product better is that product is something that all engineers should know. Like it should be the responsibility of engineers to operate in a product-led way, and designers as well. And I don't think that most companies' cultures encourage that. Like there's a lot of company cultures that kind of set things up so that engineers are not supposed to make a lot of like critical decisions. They're just supposed to kind of like be code monkeys and like implement. um, and that's really sad because engineers are so smart and we should be taking advantage of like all the critical thinking that they are already able to do and allow them to feel ownership and be able to look at a problem and come up with a solution that they feel really good about and they have the numbers to back up. I've seen more and more posts online on LinkedIn on like the industry is in a hard place right now, but the thing that I think sets people apart, like as an engineering manager I can say this, when I look at people to hire for my team, I'm looking for people who think in a product-led way, people who are thinking critically about things and not just implementing. Because as a manager, like you are focusing on so many things. Your attention is so spread out, and you really want to like trust the people that you are working with. So part of that trust comes from like I trust you to think about this problem, own this problem wholly, and come up with a solution that we're all gonna like. Um, which is a very nuanced skill, but it's something that I think is going to become more and more relevant in the years to come, especially with AI.
So well said.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I've heard a lot. There's this common thing going on of companies saying that they're following agile, but they're really very, very waterfall.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
yeah, I love hearing how you're doing it, and I think that's a really good model. And it also reminds me of the book Inspired by Marty Kagan. I think it's
Yeah.
a good read for on the product management side. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I love that approach. So what advice would you have for engineers who want to be more involved in product and curious about taking on more of a leadership role?
So I would say that there's definitely reading the books. I don't have a particular book to recommend except the Marty Kagan series is really relevant. I really enjoyed like that was one of the first series that I read, and it definitely set up like a good framework for me to understand product development. Um, I I don't have like any particular like resources that are aimed at engineers that want to understand product better, but I think that like just kind of diving into product and like understanding that there's a lot of resources online too. Um, Concretely, the things that I would recommend are building up your data sources, whether that be through a product platform or making sure that you're doing A/B testing, and then like having analytics like the analytics platforms available and like actually really looking at the data of what is coming in about how people use your product. I mean, a lot of it just comes down to curiosity, right? Curiosity about your customers, curiosity about your users, where are people getting stuck? And so data sources and then talking to customers is like the big thing in product. Like if you are a product manager, the recommendation is that you are talking to customers like at least once a week, ideally more. As a engineer, I think it is super important for engineers to be talking to customers and interacting with people who use the product that they work on just as often or like as much as you can at least, and that can come from like talking to folks on Discord or talking to people in support. One of the things that has become really obvious to me kind of like being in a leadership role is that when you separate out your team into these different buckets where this person has the responsibility of project management and this person has the responsibility of like owning this feature and this person has like the responsibility of designing a feature. Every time you do that, it introduces overhead for communicating and making decisions and just understanding like how these things are going to fit together, and that overhead can be surprisingly large. um, and so the more that you can have people kind of making those decisions and um, like being sure of them and having those data sources to back them up um and even like to some extent like doing their own project management and that they're like managing their own tickets and like communicating with like customers and not like offloading that to somebody else on their team, the more efficient you are running. So it makes a big difference, I think, because it's just as difficult for an engineer to tell somebody on like support staff or like if another engineer who's like communicating with a customer what they need to say as to just tell the customer themselves. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Absolutely. Well, and like as you're talking, one thing that came to my mind was one of the most effective meetings that we've created was, and I don't know where the idea came from, but like we started having our customer success team meet with our our stream teams. So like whatever area of the code that team is responsible for, we would have our customer success reps who are on, on the phone all the time with our customers come over and report, then basically in this 1 hour session, these are the problems that are being reported to us. This is what you guys think, this is doing, or this is what you think the user is experiencing, but this is
Mm,
what we're hearing. This
mm,
is where the pain points are. And
yeah.
it was like light bulbs everywhere. And the
Mm,
conversation was deep and rich. And yeah, I highly recommend having those kinds of, because you can't always, like you're saying, like you can't always have the customer on a call with the engineers. So it's just another kind of roundabout way, but yet direct way that they can get that information. So
yeah.
really effective. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, last question for you.
Okay.
Because like Matt was saying, our theme here at the Dev Life is kind of that beachy, like laid back. We want you to live your ultimate developer life.
Hmm.
And I'll ask this in two different ways, so you can answer one of these. But basically, like what's one Dev Life ritual that you feel like you practice regularly? Something that really helps you to live your ultimate developer life, or what does it mean to you to live your ultimate developer life?
Um, okay, so for ritual, I don't know if this is a ritual, but like my rule when I get stuck on stuff, I think this is a pretty common one, but like my rule when I get stuck on stuff is I just sleep on it. It's that has worked for me so many times that I'm still shocked by it. Because I can be like banging my head against the wall on something for hours and then sleep on it and have an immediate epiphany. So not exactly a ritual, but that is my hard and fast rule for fixing bugs or dealing with things that I don't know how to deal with. That's not a very exciting answer, but that's my answer.
It though, because sleep is underestimated. Totally.
Sleep is so important.
Yeah.
So important. In my 20s, I was like, I'll sleep when I die, but I need it, especially now with a toddler. I
Mhm.
value it so much.
Yeah, no, that is actually some of the best advice I think ever. Like every time I'm about to send a communication that I know I shouldn't, my wife is like,
Mm.
just wait till tomorrow, and I
Oh
go to
yeah.
sleep. I wake up the next day, I'm like, nope, not sending that.
Yeah. Good advice.
Love it. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Nicole, for being on the show today. For the listeners here, you can find and follow her on X or Twitter at NIX codes as the tag. And but we also want to know what you all think. So, have you made the transition from dev to product or dev to manager? Let us know in the comments. And what advice do all of you have for others? Do you have any other questions? So let us know in the comments, everyone listening or watching. And we appreciate you for being here. You can also subscribe to get notification when a new episode drops, and we would love it if you did that. And also join us in person at the Dev Fest for Salt Lake City if you're in the area. It will be on October 11th, and more info to come. But gear up for a one-day four-track event. It will be Back to the Future style with all sorts of 80s neon glory. And
All fun.
yeah. Also, if you can come, Nicole, that would be great. You
It sounds
definitely
fun.
must. But yeah, this is the Dev Life. Thank you.